Good afternoon. I'm Dan Malinaric, Vice President of Operations for Microchip Technology and the 2018 Chair of the Colorado Springs Chamber and EDC. It's really my pleasure to be here with you today. I love the buzz in the room. It really is the way I feel about the community right now. It's exciting to be doing business in Colorado Springs, and it's especially exciting when we realize how many people love this community and want to do what's best for Colorado Springs, and we see it in so many different areas. It's an honor today to introduce our keynote speaker, Governor John W. Hickenlooper. John Hickenlooper is a lifetime entrepreneur who was elected mayor of Denver in 2003. In 2005, Time magazine named him as one of the top 5 big city mayors in America. When he was inaugurated as governor of Colorado in 2011, he became the first Denver mayor to be elected to that office in over 100 years. Another interesting tidbit is that he's also the first brewer to be elected governor since Samuel Adams in 1792. It's no accident that Colorado is frequently recognized as a great place to start and do business. Throughout his 2 terms, Governor Hickenlooper's goal has been to create the most pro-business state government in the nation with the highest environmental and ethical standards. His administration has examined thousands of rules and regulations and either eliminated or streamlined more than half of them. Under his leadership, the Colorado Innovation Network was formed and advanced manufacturing grants were provided to accelerate startup and early technology businesses. With his team, the governor is building an integrated workforce training system that will create a single, seamless continuum for education and workforce preparation. Please join me in welcoming the governor of the state of Colorado, John Hickenlooper.
Oh, shucks. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. You're just trying to make me blush. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. It is always, always a pleasure to be back in El Paso County and in Colorado Springs. It's nice to see old friends, and Mayor Southers, who's doing such a great job, gave me my introduction. Some would call it a trial by fire when I became governor, and he was still Attorney General. And I think we've been able to maintain a continuously positive, constructive partnership over all these years, which, just in case any of you are wondering, doesn't mean that when we disagree, he doesn't come right to me and explain exactly why he disagrees. Just so we're perfectly clear, but always in a respectful way. We've been able to work together on any number of issues. Secretary of State Wayne Williams is here as well. I appreciate his. Where is he? He's right here. There, back there. He is equally apartisan in doing his job. Is that a word? No, probably not. Also, and the El Paso commissioners, I'm not going to list everybody that I want to recognize, but it's also been a great pleasure to work with. Also want to just take a moment to remember Deputy Sheriff Heath Gum, who passed away last week and is being laid to rest today. I've come to believe that sometimes God takes the very best of us just so the rest of us will really appreciate and treasure life more. And certainly Deputy Gum was one of the very best. So thank you for your hard work. It's communities like this that make governors like me look good. I've been reflecting just over the past weekend and week over what I would say to you all, and also reflect on kind of what divides us. And by divides us, I mean not just here, but in the whole state and in the country. And one of my son's friends came up to me and we were at some event, my son and his friend, we were doing the Pledge of Allegiance. And where it gets to one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, he said, doesn't it seem sometimes like you Democrats talk more often about justice and the Republicans talk more often about liberty? And boy, I thought about that for a while. And I think that that's an interesting subject for a future date. But I do think that perhaps Democrats and Republicans do talk more frequently about either liberty or justice, depending on the party. But I do know that, because I tried this, if you ask a Democrat which one do they believe in more, they generally say liberty. And if you ask a Republican, they generally say liberty as well. Doesn't mean anybody doesn't believe in justice. But I thought it was an interesting young observation. And I think what I really want to talk today is about that part of the Pledge of Allegiance that's about indivisible. And we see so many divisions today, and I'm not talking about just between Republicans and Democrats, between urban and rural, the gap between those who have had sufficient training and education so that they're prepared for the convulsions we're going to see in our jobs, in our economy. Automation, autonomous vehicles are just the tip of the iceberg, and we're going to see all manner of major dislocations. And I think we're all going to have to start in real time putting aside the divisions and the things that really shouldn't have a partisan bent to it. It's kind of become the fashion that everything's got to be crammed into either a Republican or a Democrat issue, or a Republican or a Democrat solution. We got to get past that, and part of it, and it was a little bit in the introduction that I got, is that what I think of as love of place. And I talked about this a little bit in the State of the State speech, but you were being commended as, having turned this economy around, and just by your own affection for this place, finding the will and the policies and the initiatives and the leaders, the mayor, to make sure that your love translates into a stronger economy, to better jobs, to infrastructure that works. And I think that love of place, I've come to this in a very powerful way. I think it's at the core of pretty much all economic development. And when I was in the restaurant business, we used to go around and set up brew pubs. We did Wine Coop, and then we did Fan Canyon down here. We did one in Fort Collins. I did a brew pub in Omaha and Des Moines, Rapid City, South Dakota. I would, as recreation, go out and walk downtowns all over the country. I probably walked the downtowns for a weekend, but I'd call old friends up from college or even high school and say, someone barely remembered me. I said, can I sleep on your couch? I want to see what your downtown's all about. And so in walking these, really, it was over 100 downtowns, I saw again and again the same affection and love of place that you demonstrate here every day. Keeping the streets clean, parks, statues, libraries, the investments that communities make in themselves so that they can, part of it's so that they and their families can have a better life, but you're also making those investments so that the future's a little more secure, the future jobs, the future of your children, the hope that I think almost every parent has. Most of us want our kids to go out and sow a few wild oats away from us, but we want them to come back and raise their kids in our community. Again, I don't see that as a partisan thing. And when you get down to love of place, and there is a word My staff tells me never to use this word because they think it betrays me of being kind of an SAT, elitist. But I think it's kind of a goofy word, but it's a real word. It's called topophilia. And topophilia means love of place. I read it. I did not make it up. But I think all of you have experienced it maybe after a day of hunting, getting up early and getting out there just as the sun's rising, maybe having beer at one of our more than 350 breweries in the state of Colorado. Taking a family member walking through the Garden of Gods. The Garden of the Gods is, one of those places that just cries out a love of place. Catherine Lee Bates took a carriage ride up Pikes Peak before she wrote America the Beautiful and described the power of the place in a letter back to her friends in the East. And that sense that rugged landscape that we love and that rugged individualism is the whole story of our economic success really isn't true. And certainly there is a strong strain of individual determination that runs throughout the history of the West. But there's also a huge amount of collaborative history. And that part is even stronger, I think, in our DNA. They never tell you this, but if you talk to the real, true historians of the West, the trappers and the early frontiersmen never went up in the mountains by themselves. They went in groups of 10 or 20 because it was just so much less dangerous and so much more productive if one guy's doing the skinning, one guy's setting the traps, one guy's cooking food, if everybody was working on a team. What they often don't say when they describe the West is that there are a lot more barn raisings than there were shootouts. And I think, who doesn't love their home and who isn't willing to invest in it? You look at what you've done here in the past 6 or 7 years, it is really a model. I remember coming down here when I first got elected governor, and I would tell Colorado Springs and El Paso County, well, here's what Fort Collins did, or here's what Boulder's been doing. For the last 2 years, I go to other cities, and I tell them here's what Colorado Springs did. You've been incentivizing businesses, you've been building infrastructure, you've been creating jobs, and most powerfully, you've been working together. And I think part of that might be the fact that you really don't have any Democrats here, so there's not such a divide. But you have diversified. I'm going to get in trouble for that, aren't I? By my own people. You have become a diversified economy, and you can look at high tech and cyber, aerospace, military. I mean, your economy is so much broader based now than it was. You've got good schools, you've got easy commutes, and you've invested in your infrastructure to make sure that continues. Got low crime rates, you control your own utility, and you've got probably the best employment surge that you've had in a couple decades. And that didn't come easy. I watched how hard this community worked, getting through floods, right? When you're trying to turn things around the hardest. You just made an amazing commitment to your own community, which really is the only way this kind of change ever occurs. I can't wait. I have not been out to UCCS's to see the Ent Center for Arts, but several of my staff have been there, and they are blown away. And again, those are the kinds of investments, when you get those in your community, they pay dividends for a long time. We launched a couple years ago the National Cybersecurity Center, really making Colorado Springs a national hub around cybersecurity. And cybersecurity is not something that's going to go away or become less important. And your leadership, the mayor, the university, Chamber of Commerce, everybody got that and understood that it had to be a focus. And now that center, I don't know if Vance Brown is out there, if you get a chance to see Vance Brown, who's taken over the National Center for Cybersecurity as a CEO and the man is a runaway train. I mean that in the best way possible. He has a determination and a focus and an energy that is masterful, and he is going to make that institution the biggest and the best in the country. You just watch. So thank him when you see it. There are a lot of things he could be doing with his time, which would pay him a whole lot more money than again, through his affection for Colorado Springs, working to make that the best it can be. The Springs is already home to over 100 cybersecurity companies. As that center grows, that's just going to mushroom and get bigger and bigger. You look at the Olympic Training Center and all the stuff to make Olympic City really the Olympic City, Air Force Academy, all those investments as you've diversified your economy are just going to grow even better. And I think in many ways, how you've done it does set an example for Washington and for the rest of the state. That sense of collaboration and trying to listen harder. You know, I've become convinced in the last 7 years that when you disagree with somebody and you want to persuade them to maybe change their thoughts a little bit, the best way to do that is not to tell them what you think and why they're wrong. That's probably the worst. I spend most of my life doing that. The best way is just to sit down and listen and ask them again and again for them to explain to you the different aspects of why they care and believe what they do. I think that collaborative effort that you've demonstrated here and we've tried to use throughout the state has a lot to do with the turnaround the whole state's had. You know, sometimes it seems inevitable, right? That well, of course Colorado's going to turn around. You know, back then it didn't seem inevitable, I'll tell you. You know, we were 26th in unemployment. We were 40th in job growth. Now, depending on which measurement you look at, we're either first, second, or third in job growth. Last summer, we got down to 2.3% unemployment. That's the lowest of any state in the history of America. We shattered the record in unemployment. We've also shattered a record every year in tourism. We've really turned tourism from just bringing people into the state to enjoy the wonders and the recreation of the state and then going home. Tourism now is about showing off the whole state and how pro-business we are and what a great place this is for entrepreneurs. And certainly Colorado Springs, I know 3 or 4 specific individuals who came here first on a vacation and then figured out a way to be able to come here professionally. I think in many ways we are one of the healthiest states. We are not the healthiest state. We're one of the healthiest states, but we're certainly the thinnest state. What I always tell people, though, is if you look at our obesity rates today, and you took where we are, still the lowest obesity rate in the country, but you take that obesity rate and you put it back 20 years ago, we would have been the worst. So the whole country has shifted from what was once the worst is now the best, and it's a bad sign. What I really want to talk about today, and I'm not going to go on at length. I obviously had to spend a lot of time telling you guys how great you were. I've learned a few things in my time, but I want to say that part of getting to nonpartisan solutions, part of getting to this love of place is to make sure that we don't leave people behind or leave parts of our state behind. And you know, as your success, and I remember when I would come down here and Denver was starting to boom, and there were a lot of, let's just say, pointed comments of why wasn't the state doing more to help El Paso County, or why wasn't the state doing more? We still here at Pueblo's just beginning to get to where you guys got a couple years ago. The state does what it can. Maybe it needs a little help and needs to be reminded sometimes, and certainly we could use more resources available for economic development efforts. In terms of rural Colorado, I think we're going to need even more. And I think DOLA, the Department of Local Affairs, takes severance taxes, some other revenue sources, and really is focused on, I think, one of the real challenges that keeps rural Colorado from keeping up. And just to frame this, I don't think, if we don't have a strong, vibrant rural economy, I don't think the state will ever be as strong or as successful as it needs to be. And I think That is every one of our responsibility. We may think we live in the city, we don't, we could import our food. I don't believe that. I think we need to be prepared to have our own sustainable sources of food. And I believe that our traditional Western heritage, ranching and farming, that is a crucial part of what gives us part of that love of place and our strength. And if we let that decline, and it's been declining, if we let it continue to decline, we should do so at our own peril. So first on that is that I think we need to commit ourselves to making sure we have high-speed broadband in every town, in every county in this state. And we've started this about 6 years ago now. And we have had some great successes. You look, Montrose, Meeker, Rangeley, Delta, these are small towns on the West Slope, and they have redundant high-speed broadband. We've just put together a 1 gig fiber network that's going to cover all of Delta County, so that's now you're getting into Hotchkiss, Paonia, Orchard City, Cedar Edge. And these are towns that once you give them that high-speed broadband, then small businesses and entrepreneurs can set up shop out there. And this is equally true on the Eastern Plains as it is on the West Slope. We formed last year the Colorado Rural Venture Fund. So $9 million is going to be spent specifically, and this is private money. I could see a few people raising their eyebrows. I know the crowd I'm talking to. This is private money that's going to be spent focusing on starting, job nucleation, business nucleation, creating, opportunity in our rural community. We started 5 years ago something called Startup Colorado, which was kind of a spin-off from what they call Silicon Flatirons. It's a part of the University of Colorado Boulder, and was tied together with our Office of Economic Development, but really to start building the same network that's helped you succeed, your tech companies here succeed, and Denver Boulder has a strong network like that. It's different to start it in the rural part of the state, but it's equally possible. And that effort to build the network allowed us to do Colorado Jumpstart 4 years ago, which now, again, this doesn't sound like a lot, but the idea was to give tax relief to new businesses in rural parts of the state, tax relief for the business and for the employees. And so we've now created about 338 jobs in small rural communities. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. And we're going to push it even harder, turn the dial up a little more, offer a little more incentive. There's probably a few entrepreneurs here that would consider starting a business in one of the smaller towns in the state. We started Space to Create. Now in Trinidad, we're working on about a $16 million housing, affordable housing program in partnership with Trinidad. But a big part of that is to get creative people, artists, musicians, entrepreneurs, we count them as creative people, to also put their efforts into a town like Trinidad. Because again, I think it benefits Colorado Springs and El Paso County if Trinidad does better. And for the life of me, I look at all those tourists flooding into Santa Fe. I think Trinidad's cooler, just do. All these things, the infrastructure becomes important. And it's not just broadband. Water, long term, we created the Colorado Water Plan 3.5 years ago, and we had over 30,000 people work on that. Most of the funding for it is going to be generated through the projects themselves, the sale of the water, but we're probably $1 billion, $1.5 billion short. And we should, as a state, that's over 30 years, that's a relatively small amount of money. And yet it's something that's crucial for those rural parts of the state, because people in Denver, people in Colorado Springs are always going to, your water bill is just such a small part of your monthly budget, at least for most people, that if it's an extra $1 or $2, you don't care. But that increase in the price of water, or what an urban area, an urban user will pay for water, puts it way out of the range of ranchers and farmers using it for irrigation. And again, I think we neglect water at our own peril. Certainly, we're always going to have enough water for our cities and suburbs. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about making sure that we have one of the most vibrant and successful rural economies in the country, because it's going to be part of our brand, and it's going to be something that will help all of us attract entrepreneurs and attract our children to come back and raise their families. I think that ultimately we have an opportunity right now with the transformation that's going on in terms of the economy. We're really in the middle of a run and an opportunity as productivity increases through all these technological innovations. We have some real chances to seize the moment. And some of this is in alternative energy, wind and solar. And I don't think the federal policies are going to make much difference. Right now, wind is so inexpensive. You don't need a subsidy anymore. Solar is coming down so dramatically. We're going to have cleaner energy at a lower cost, which has always been the kind of the dream, and it's a good thing. And we now have the capacity, so if people lose their jobs working at a coal plant or lose their jobs working in a coal mine, we have the ability to train them in real time and hopefully get them better paying jobs. And I mean, I'm sincere when I say that we can do that. I realize you guys have your own generating plant here that is a cause or an issue of discussion. I am not wading into that. All I'm saying is that the country is moving towards cleaner sources of energy and is increasingly able to do that at a lower cost. Anyway, I say all this just, I've got a year left. And we're actually announcing a guy, I can't say anything until 2/15, because he works for a very large corporation. We're hiring a guy who's going to be our new Secretary of Labor, who understands how we're going to retrain and how we're going to make sure that we adapt our entire arc of education and training to be prepared for how rapidly this new economy is evolving. But he's going to come work for 11 months is what he's going to have left. He's going to take all the different programs we're working on, and he's going to create what I believe, and he believes, will be a national model. And just for the record, he's going to take about a 95% pay cut. So even though I can't say his name, once you hear about it this afternoon, when you see him, thank him. And I think all that, he's doing this. He's going to come work for 11 months. He's going to leave millions of dollars in options and millions of dollars on the table because he loves Colorado, right? And because he wants to be part of this amazing success that right now you guys are the perfect example of. So I get to say this from time to time. I'll just finish up and say, on behalf of the entire state of Colorado, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very, very much.